Hello, and welcome to Sex Talks for Self-Advocates. My name is Anna Costalis, and I'm the Resource Dissemination Manager here at AUCD. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us here today. Before we begin, I'd like to address a few logistical details. First, we'll provide a brief introduction of our speakers. Following the speaker's presentation, there'll be time for questions. Because of the number of participants, we ask that you keep your lines muted throughout the presentation. You can submit questions at any point during the presentation via the chat box on the webinar console. You can send it to the whole audience, or you can, if you want to send a private chat to our moderator, our co-chair, Rebecca Morris, she'd be happy to answer those questions. Please note, we may not be able to address every question and may combine some questions. This entire webinar is being recorded and will be available on AUCD's website following the event. There will also be a short 5-question evaluation survey at the close of the webinar. We invite you to provide feedback on the webinar and also to provide suggestions for future topics. I'll now pass the mic over to our Sexual Health Special Interest Group co-chair, Julie Atkinson, who will be introducing our speakers. Julie.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you everyone who's joined us today. We are so excited about this series, and we are excited to kick it off this today. I guess it's morning in some places and afternoon in others. So wherever you are, we are glad you're joining us. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists today for our first self-advocate sex talk. Thank you, Anna. Our first panelist is Max Barrows. He's an outreach director for Green Mountain Self-Advocates, a position he has held since 2007. He mentors youth and adults with developmental disabilities to speak up for themselves and become leaders. Green Mountain Self-Advocate is a lead partner for the Self-Advocacy Resource and Technical Assistance Center, SARTEC. Max leads SARTEC's technical assistance team, assisting local and state self-advocacy organizations across the nation. Max connects with people on all levels of advocating for true inclusion for people with disabilities. In his work, he advances the message that when you meet an individual with a disability, presume competence. He received a White House Champions of Change Award for this work in 2015. Max is an accomplished self-advocate from Vermont who serves as a board member for the Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered from 2008 to 2016. Our next panelist is Catherine McLaughlin. Give the next slide, please. Catherine is a national expert and trains individuals, staff, and parents on sexuality and developmental disabilities. She teaches sexuality education to people with developmental disabilities and intellectual disabilities, as well as trains them to be peer sexuality educators themselves. Catherine is the author of an agency and school curriculum, Sexuality Education for People with Developmental Disabilities, and has developed 2 online courses, one to train professionals, entitled Developmental Disabilities and Sexuality 101, and another training course for parents entitled Talking to Your Kids, Developmental Disabilities and Sexuality. Catherine can be contacted at www.elevateustraining.com. It's also on the slide right there. And we'll make sure that we do put the contact information in our chat box towards the end of the presentation as well. Rounding out our list of panelists is Erica Thomas. Erica is a health educator for the Developmental Disabilities Administration Health Initiative, housed at Georgetown University Center for Child and Human Development, a University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities in Washington, D.C. She serves as a liaison between family members, healthcare professionals, and community providers that support people with disabilities. Erica develops and implements healthcare information curriculum and education sessions on a variety of wellness topics, including sexuality, for people with disabilities and their support teams. She is the faculty team leader and mentor of first-year medical students at Georgetown University, where she prepares future doctors to support and provide excellent health care for people with disabilities. Erica actively collaborates with state and local advocacy groups to deliver her message of wellness of the whole person. When she's not advocating for people with disabilities or promoting sexuality education in the community, she enjoys traveling the world and taking long naps. And just a few things over the next few slides, just a couple things that we want to set the stage for our webinar today, and just to let folks know. So throughout the webinar today, our speakers, our panelists are going to be using person first language. When we do read the questions from the chat box, the questions that our panelists will be addressing today, we are going to be using the words of our self-advocates, the way the questions were written when we received them. We'll also be using medical terminology as we are describing different parts of sexual and social relationships. And we'll also be using words such as high functioning and low functioning. We certainly understand that there are other ways that people address, each of these topics. And, when you feel free to, when you're doing your chat, use the words that you're comfortable with and that you like, and we will use those in turn when we are answering those questions. Our next slide, we do recognize that relationships and sexuality are very personal topics. And at any point during this presentation, if you ever feel uncomfortable, if you're reminded of a time, maybe if something has happened to you and you want to talk about that with someone, there is a number here that you can call. This is for the Crisis Center call, the Crisis Call Center, and their phone number is 775-784-8090. And I believe Rebecca's also going to put that in the chat box. You can always look for that number again later on in the chat box if you don't write it down right now at the beginning. So at the Crisis Call Center, they do have counselors, trained professionals who are there to answer your questions and to help you work through any of those emotional responses you might be having. I just want to review the chat box. We keep referring to the chat box just so that everyone knows how to use that. On the bottom of the screen, there is a bar that runs across the bottom of the page, and there is an icon that says chat, and it has a thought bubble with 3 dots in it. You can click on that, and that will open your chat box. In the chat box, this is where you can send a message to everyone, the whole group, or if you have questions and that you would like our panelists to answer, you can send those to Rebecca Morris or to our host, and she will get those to Rebecca as well. So that is there. That's a great place to know what the chat box is and where to locate that. Lastly, about the webinar today, the questions that we are drawing from today that we are addressing, our panelists are going to address, were questions from a survey we did of self-advocates. And this survey is still active, and if you have more questions, we will post the link where you can go and participate in the survey for our future webinars as well. So the questions that our panelists are addressing today come from this survey. They come from self-advocates themselves. Throughout the presentation, each of our educators are going to take turns addressing the questions and sharing with you the information that they've prepared. At about 45 after the hour, we are going to stop our panelist discussion, and at that point we're going to begin our question and answer, where we will answer the questions that folks are putting in the chat box. We may not get through all of the questions today, and if not, we are going to be keeping a copy of those questions to add to our survey questions, so that way when we do our next Sex Talk, number 2, we'll be able to address some of those questions at that time as well. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Max and Catherine to talk a little bit about sexual self-advocacy.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on this webinar, and I'm happy to talk to you all, and I'm glad to talk to you all. And thanks for that introduction, Julie Atkinson. The first question that came to us is what is sexual self-advocacy? And well, according to Green Mountain Self-Advocates, which is the state organization that I work for, sexual self-advocacy means speaking up for yourself sexually. And also also means getting information. It also means taking a stand. And it means saying to whomever, this is my choice. It's stating your sexual limits and desires with your partner, respecting other limits and desires, and it's starting to do what you wish, what you want to do in a relationship. So that is what I got from the peers that I have connected with doing my job.
Well,
And another
I
piece.
come on. I got no word.
So another part, one of the questions that we received was, how do I meet someone? And we thought thinking about sexual self-advocacy is a way to look at this kind of information. So the first thing that we're going to answer is, how do I meet someone? But oftentimes self-advocates will say that people don't support them in relationships and getting this kind of information. So the real focus of this webinar is to give you the information you need so that you can be a sexual self-advocate. So as far as how do I meet someone, some of the suggestions we have, Max and I are kind of doing this question together, but is to go to places where you find other people, somewhere where there's a group, and maybe it's a party or some sort of social event.
Right.
And also, if you have any ideas yourselves, those of you listening, that you want to just type into the chat and give other people ideas, like if you now have a partner or sweetheart, how or where did you meet that person? And then, if you're typing some of these things in, Maxa has some other ideas as well. Well,
to kind of pick up a little bit of what you said, Catherine, about meeting places, meeting people places, according to my peers, I know that. Next slide, please, if there is a next slide. People like to meet, at self-advocacy events, like state and national conferences. And I would say, too, that people meet each other through their local self-advocacy groups. That's what I've, seen. And also, like, people just meet each other through friends. Sometimes introductions come through family members, so people meet that way. And, some people have come to me about this, like you might meet someone who is also getting services from your agency, like your provider agency, if you have one. Next slide. And pretty much other ways, pretty much that people meet that I've gotten from is just through connections, like with like your church or faith community. People meet that way. People have met through pride events who are identify as LGBTQIA, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and asexual. And also people have met through by joining a club, like in their town, like a community garden, maybe like a softball team or whatever sporting event that they do in that regard. Some people meet at work, sometimes like when volunteering. If you take a class at college, sometimes people meet that way. And also people have all used social media. Some people meet like online. Sometimes people go through to online dating sites, but that does not always turn out well for some people.
Yeah, let me just add some of the ones that people added in the chat too. And then we can move on to the social media part, and Erica can do that part. But someone wrote volunteering is a great place, Special Olympics, youth groups, taking a class, joining a club like Max mentioned, study group, self-advocacy organizations, and also social activities within residential living, dating sites. So someone said they have a lot of people who want to find dating sites for people with disabilities, which that's a great idea. So maybe, Erica, you can do the next piece on the social media and meeting people that way.
So we talked about some really great ways that we can meet people in the community, like going out and interacting with folks, so making new friends or maybe like a potential partner. But also a lot of people have been going on to social media to find a friend or a partner, potential partner. So there should be a slide about social media, the new way to meet people. I think it's the one after this one. And everyone can follow along. So when we're talking about going on to social media, we have to make sure that we're being safe when we're online. So you never want to post your social security number, your date of birth, your address, or your phone number. You want to be careful when you're clicking links. So you don't want to click around and potentially click on something that'll give your computer a virus or open up a different page or something with some inappropriate things, or you might be at work or you might be around family. So you want to be careful when you're clicking links. You want to be careful who you quote unquote friend. So when you go online, you can friend people on Facebook, you can friend people on Instagram. So you want to be careful with who you're friending. There are people out here who are predators, so they might, want to get your personal information. They may want to take advantage of you. So you just got to keep that in mind. Not everyone will, but some people out there aren't as nice as we are. Remember that everything you post is going to be permanent. So if you post a picture of yourself, if you post a comment or something else, even if you delete it, it's still out there in the World Wide Web and someone can always find it. So just be mindful about what you post online. You want to make sure you're being nice to people and you don't want to be a bully and be mean to people. You want to be careful when you're using your social media at work because your job may have a policy that might state that you can't use it online. So you might want to check in to make sure that you can use your social media at work. Don't post anything that you wouldn't want a loved one to see. So we're not posting naked pictures. We're not posting pictures of us having a great night out drinking. Keep that between you and your friends and whoever else that you're with. And if someone isn't being nice to you online, just like we're trying to be nice to people, if someone's not being nice to you, you want to make sure that you tell someone. So you can tell your parent, you can tell your guardian, you can tell your support staff. And often on social media sites, they'll have a place where you can report people. So if someone isn't being nice, calling names or whatever else, you want to make sure that you report these people. And always, always, always keep your passwords a secret. So you don't want to give any information about your passwords because in that way people can go into your own personal information. Can I have the next slide, please? So in your chat box, you guys have been doing an awesome job with putting stuff in the chat box. So let's decide whether or not this is appropriate online behavior. So in the chat box, I'll read a statement and then you can tell me yes or no in the chat box. So is it appropriate to post naked pictures online? What do you think? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of no's. Yes, 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 yes. Very good. What about posting a picture of your pet? Is that okay? Yeah. Awesome. What about posting a picture of you and your friends at an event? All right. All right. So here in DC, it's really, really hot. So I'm not going outside to exercise, but is it okay to post a picture of me exercising? Awesome, 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 awesome. What about a post about a person you had sex with last night? Awesome. And then the last one, what about posting a picture of yourself masturbating? Is that appropriate? You guys are pretty awesome. Thank you.
So a lot of what Erica was talking about was what's considered public and what's considered private. And a lot of what you mentioned was no to a lot of these private things like being sexual or your bodies without clothes on. So yeah, you all got it. It makes a lot of sense it seems like to most of you, of what's okay and not okay. So the other piece is the next slide is thinking about, okay, well, what if I found someone that I'm interested in? You know, I think they're really attractive. I have a crush on them. I get these sexual feelings when I'm around them. And so the first thing to think about is, well, can this, just because I had these sexual feelings about this person, would they be a good partner for me? So you can see on the slide at the bottom, there's a few questions. So who could be a potential sexual partner? Would it be okay if it was someone of the same gender or the same sex as you? So maybe you could answer that, and that, you know, for some people, there might be different answers, but we do know that two men or two women can be very attracted to each other in the same way as a man and a woman can. And so we think people should be able to be in love with whoever they're in love with and have a partner of whoever they want. But some people, that might not work for them in their own lives, and that's okay too. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of relationships. The other one is, what about somebody else in a relationship? This is a question that I talk to self-advocates about a lot. Like, is that an okay person to try to go out with or meet or not? And, you know, there's kind of a mix of answers. But most people say, oh, it can cause a lot of problems. But sometimes that's how people meet their sweetheart. So that's more of an opinion question that different people have to figure out how they feel about it. Is that okay or not? But lots of people say it's not okay because it might lead to problems. The other one is a staff person. So this person's being paid to support you. And in that situation, that wouldn't be okay because that's part of their job. And so the answer to that one would be no, not in that situation. And we're going to talk more about consent and what if somebody doesn't have a disability and someone has a disability later on in this webinar too. And then someone who's underage. So that's another thing, that this is an issue that someone might reach out and try to get to know somebody who isn't of age to be in a sexual relationship. And that could cause problems as well. So those are things to think about. Just because I have these feelings doesn't mean I have to act on them and try to meet this person. But once you do, and you can change the slide now, once you do decide, yeah, this person is someone that I really like to get to know, then you can take another step. And you know, the one step you can take is to flirt with them. And so lots of people say, well, how do you flirt with people? And the other thing is, how do you know if it's working or not? So the first thing is, flirting with people, you can smile at them, you can wink, you can compliment them. There's lots of ways in using body language, letting people know that you think they're cute or attractive. And really thinking about, how do we know when our flirting is working? Because one thing with flirting is, if the person doesn't want it, it can start to feel like harassment. So the first thing we want to do is make sure it's working. Like, you smile at somebody and wink, and they kind of giggle and smile back. And when something isn't working, it would be more like they look away, or they start to avoid you and go away from you. So that's one thing. And I just wanted to see if either Max or Erica had anything to add about getting to know someone with flirting. Did you have anything to add to that?
I'll just add one thing to piggyback on what you said. So with different interactions with different people. So if someone is giving you body language or giving you vibes that they aren't interested, you just got to leave it alone and try again. So you shouldn't keep pushing. And then if the feeling is mutual between two people, then you'll see the spark, you'll feel it, so you'll know, and then you can go and you can pursue that relationship with someone. But let's just be mindful that it's okay for you not to like someone, and it's okay for someone not to like you back.
I don't really have much to say, because I think a lot of the bases were covered.
Okay.
Other than just I wonder if sometimes it can be hard to tell if someone is flirting with you or not. But
Right. Right. Yeah, and Max, that brings us into the next thing. You could talk to the person, you could ask them questions, you can tell the person something about yourself. You know, these public conversations, like you can talk about where you went to a concert last weekend, or where you work, or something that's a public conversation. So that's another way to start to get to know someone. Besides flirting, you can ask questions and tell them something about yourself. Then you could also talk on the phone. You could call them or text them or Facebook message them as a way to get to know them more and maybe bring the relationship to a different level. You could also ask the person to join you in a group activity too. You could sort of ask them out, but it's a group activity rather than just a date between the two of you. So you ask someone to go to a self-advocacy meeting, or you ask someone to go to your church ice cream social, whatever it might be. There's lots of people around. You go and get to know each other that way. And then the other thing you can do is ask a person out on a date, you know, an official date between the two of you, and make a plan for what you want to, where you want to go, when, and all of those things. So that's a way to meet people, to let them know that you're interested and try to get to know them. And then Max is going to talk in the next slide about, like, say you become a couple, because this was another question we had.
yeah, so the question was, how do you know if someone is your boyfriend or girlfriend? And, you know, I would say just if someone who has said someone would say probably like that they are interested in you is one way of telling. To add to that, I would say both people, you know, are willingly agree on what is okay and what is not okay in like the relationship, in your relationship. Like, just to give some examples, if it's okay to date other people, like how often do you want to, you know, spend time together? You know, how often should, you know, people like us, like we should be texting back and forth or maybe talking on the phone. And so often also too, people say that they are a girlfriend or boyfriend, but they live such like restricted lives that, you know, they only see each other, well, I don't know, a couple times a year, and only in public places, and rarely having any opportunity to, you know, have any privacy or be alone. And that is something that people have, you know, expressed to me while talking about this topic. Yeah. That's what I got.
Alrighty, so and listening to what we talked about around relationships and knowing if someone is your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your friend or whoever you want that person to be, you have to have consent. So what exactly does consent mean? And it basically means that you have to agree to participate in an intimate act. And it means that both people have to say yes to this act. So it doesn't matter if it's holding hands, it doesn't matter if you're going to kiss someone, hug someone, oral sex, regular sex, whatever type of intimacy you're thinking about, you have to have consent first, and both people must say yes first. So in order to get consent, the easiest thing you can do is ask. So do you want to hold my hand? Do you mind if I give you a kiss on the cheek? And then the person can give you a yes or a no answer. And remember, both people have to say yes. So if someone says no, and you ask someone like, can I hold your hand? The person says no, you just keep it moving. Sexual acts should feel good to both people. So you shouldn't feel like you're being forced into doing something. And remember that you can always say no at any time. You could be having sex with the same person every single day for the past 30 years. And if you want to tell this person no, then you can tell the person no. So yes doesn't always mean that it happens all the time. Giving consent once doesn't mean the answer is always yes. So that goes with the previous statement. And remember, if you're not sure, you can always ask. And I saw a chat question down there, and I'm about to answer your question on the next slide. Next slide, please. So if a person cannot give verbal consent, so positive consent may look like positive body language, so leaning into someone, smiling, pulling you closer. Someone might use sign language and tell you yes. The person may nod their head yes. And some people use communication devices, so then they can communicate with you that way. Negative consent, it may be pulling away, it may be crying, not responding to the other person's touch, turning his or her face away from you, wrapping the arms around the body, like to protect the body, to protect yourself from the other person. And then, like we said too, sign language no, or nodding the head no, or again, using the communication device to tell you no. Next slide, please. So again, for the sake of time, we'll only go through a couple of these. So again, if you could use your chat box and answer me yes or no. Ella asked Leah if they could cuddle in bed. Leah turned her back to Ella. Was consent given? Did she say yes or no? Awesome. Mike told Ebony he wanted to kiss her, and he did. Was consent given? Awesome. Todd asked Joe for oral sex. Joe smiled and unbuttoned Todd's pants. Was consent given? Awesome. Tyrone asked Lisa for a kiss. Lisa smiled and puckered her lips. Was consent given? You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Alrighty, so the next slide is what exactly does consent mean? And we use that word quite a bit. And you know, it is more than just getting permission. There are actually like 2 steps or 2 questions to ask in this. Did the person say yes? Was it freely chosen? And it comes to people being honest, and there can be no pressure, no lies, and no force. If you know, you need to ask for permission for everything you do that involves the other person, and you know, you can change your mind at any time. You know, you know, minds change all the time. That's just how it is. And you know, just because you agreed one time to do something in a relationship, it does not mean you will do it every time. It is, you know, it doesn't have to be that way. So if I could have, you know, if there's like another slide after this, or go to the next, if that was mine.
I think this is my slide, Matt.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. Okay, so like Max said, I'm just going to give you a couple examples to add to what Max was saying about freely chosen. So if someone says, if you don't have sex with me, I will break up with you. Is that freely chosen? Does the person feel like they were able to say yes or no? Or was there some kind of pressure or threat or a lie? So in that case, there was a threat, right? If you don't have sex with me, I'll break up with you. Then that's not freely chosen. So that wouldn't be consent. And then the next one, if you don't have sex with me, I'll tell everyone that you did. Again, that's not freely chosen, right? That's bullying somebody, pressuring someone, threatening them. So that's not consent either. And then another one is someone says, I love you and I will never leave you, even though they don't really love the person and they have plans to leave the person. It may not be against the law to do that, but it isn't fair to the other person to lie to them to get them to say yes. So as Erica and Max said, consent is a yes, you're giving permission, but also it's freely chosen. without pressures, lies, or threats, or force. And I always say, I could hold a gun to your head and get you to say yes, but that wouldn't be freely chosen. So I think someone else is, oh, it's me again. So interesting, a couple people wrote in too about saying that they want someone that's going to treat them the way they want to be treated in a relationship. And that they want not like they've been treated in the past. So this person's saying, as far as what's important in relationship is they want to be treated well, which kind of brings us into our next question, which is question 4, how do I talk with my partner? And so I had written down being really honest, and I think Max said that as well, around consent, open, kind, respectful, and listen really well to them. So that's how we want to talk to partners, as if they are equal to us, not looking down at them. And this person wrote in that they want to be treated better. So I think that's a great point around how do you want to be talked to? So what are some ways that you want to be talked to, and make sure that's what your partner's using, is those ways of talking: respect, kindness, being equal, treating you as an equal, treating you as a person. And then the other thing that came up too in the chat I saw was that do you have to be in a relationship with someone if you don't want to? And you really don't. And that touches on consent too. You don't have to. Just because someone likes you doesn't mean you have to be in a relationship with somebody. But it's important to talk to your partner too in the way that you want to be talked to. And that's not always easy for all of us to communicate with partners, because we get mad or emotional, and but being honest and respectful is important. So I think we can go to the next slide. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about being assertive or speaking up. And a lot of this comes up when we talk about self-advocacy too, speaking up for yourself and saying what you need. So here's an example of speaking up for yourself. You're going to stand or sit up straight. You're going to face the person you're talking to. You're going to look them in the eyes, but don't stare at them. You want to be gentle when you're looking people in the eyes, and speak in a clear, firm voice that's loud enough to be heard, but not too loud. So I'm curious if you all are good at speaking up, or if you feel like you might be more bossy or more shy and it's hard to speak up. And since we don't have tons of time, it's something for you to think about. Like, am I good at speaking up for myself? When am I good at speaking up for myself? When am I bossy with people? Is it when I'm really angry? When am I shy? When I feel like I'm not treated as an equal? So think about speaking up. It's okay to ask for what you need and what you want, and to, be assertive and speak up. And then this last piece, this is like if you have a problem with someone in a relationship. You're in a relationship. It could be a friendship or a sexual relationship. But the question was, how do I communicate with someone who feels they're in a relationship further than I am? So they think we're partners, and I'm not sure we're partners. So how do I talk to them was the question. So the first question I would have is, what is the person doing that makes you think they're further in the relationship with you than you feel? So are they calling you 10 times a day? Are they trying to kiss you all the time in public? Do they want to know where you are at every moment? Like, what are they doing that makes you think they're further along than you are? And then this is a model that lots of people use to communicate. So you can say, when you call me 10 times a day, I feel annoyed because that's too many times to call me. Can you please only call me once a day? So it's a way to talk. It talks about how you feel, and it doesn't blame them and point a finger, but it also has you speak up and say what you need. So it can be lots of different scenarios, and you can put this in here. So that's just an example of one way you can do it. So I think that was it for me. Max.
Nope, I think this one is me.
Okay, you.
So when I first got this question, I wasn't sure about what the person was asking. So maybe the person is in on the webinar. So if you need more information about this, or if someone else wants more information about it, please type in, because I want to make sure that I'm answering the question properly in the way you wanted it to be answered. So the question was, is a non-disabled partner at risk for having sex with a disabled partner? And it'll be a few slides, but I kind of looked at it or thought that it meant like, will you get in trouble legally, or you know, will something go wrong if you were to date if you didn't have a disability and you dated a person with a disability? So basically, when you're dating a person with a disability, it's the same as dating anyone else. You want to treat the person like a person and treat the person with respect. You want to make sure that you're advocating for your partner. Don't date someone with a disability because you feel sorry for that person. And I want everyone to know and understand, and in working with the people I support, people live fulfilling lives, and they are having sex, and they're having relationships, they're having friendships, relationships, all of the above. So when, like, again, when you're dating a person with a disability, just remember respect. That's very important. Next slide, please. So again, will I get in trouble if I date a person with a disability? And no, you will not, if you're treating the person with dignity and respect. If you're truly interested in a relationship with the person, you get consent first. So we talked about earlier, are we just friends? Are we dating? Are we committed to each other? You know, boyfriend or girlfriend? Are we married? So you have to figure out what that relationship looks like. And remember, with consent, both people have to say yes to the type of relationship that you're in. Communicate with your partner and ask questions about the person. And again, you want to advocate for your partner. So that might mean going to different events with your partner, going to Special Olympics, for example, different meetings, different community outings, just all types of things to just make sure that your partner knows that you're there for them and that you respect them and that you're going to stand up for them. Next slide, please. And will I get in trouble if I date a person with a disability? Yes. If you're manipulating the person, if you're forcing a relationship with the person, if you're taking advantage of a person, so emotionally, financially, if you're abusing a person sexually, if you're physically abusing a person, if you're keeping a person away from family and friends, if you're threatening the person, and if you're stealing or withholding like medication, mobility devices, things of that nature, then yes, you will get in trouble, and these are things that you should not be doing. And I'm seeing a question down in the chat about having a relationship with someone and around guardianship. So can we leave that one towards the end, and then we can kind of tackle that, because we have a few more slides to get in so we can get your questions in. All right, thank you. I think we're on to the next slide, yeah.
All right, so I think this is me. And I think the next question that was asked of us is like, how do you come out as LGBTQIA? And you know, we have self-advocates who are doing projects about coming out. And coming out is a term that it's a term used when people feel like comfortable enough to tell others that they are LGBTQIA, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual. And, you know, one of the things that I have been, you know, educated on, and also I've been, you know, I've learned through having talks with peers in Vermont, is it can be difficult because what they've told me is it can be difficult because, you know, youth with disabilities often, youth without disabilities, I just, you know, thought brain fart. Youth without disabilities often come out at an earlier age, like when they are 12 or 13, and it has to do with having more than one identity, which often means having to deal with, you know, more stigma for a person with a disability. So what happens is here is, you know, for a person with a disability, they face more stigma. when it comes to being honest about themselves and coming out. So, you know, people with disabilities who also identify as LGBTQIA, all the stigma can put pressure on, you know, that person to not be as honest as they want to be. So, you know, it's a double whammy, and sometimes people don't accept us being sexual in the first place. But then when, you know, a person identifies as LGBTQIA, it can be even more difficult for people to support you to be who you are. So I have found that out through peers that I have talked to. Just having more than one identity is difficult enough. And then, of course, just the lack of support for people with disabilities to be sexual in the first place, and then adding on the, you know, sexual identity, just, you know, it's just more of a heavy weight on the shoulders of them. And also just, you know, this is why you know, we feel up at, you know, here is, we feel that it's just so important to find, you know, peer-to-peer connections, just because, you know, just people with disabilities realize that they're not alone, and they just, you know, when they join self-advocacy, they talk to people and connect with people that have been through the same, if not similar, challenges as them. And so just going off of that, you know, try to connect with peers, and also just try to connect with your local Pride Center, if there's a Pride Center. I'm sure there is in every state. So that's what I get out of it, and that's what I take. I'm wondering if, Erica, you had anything to, you know, you're the next slider, unless you have anything to add to what I said.
I'll just add really quickly, Max, you did an awesome job with telling folks about the LGBTQIA community and telling people where they can get more information and resources. I just wanted to add that we put a section in with a couple of links about different resources, and it has a glossary and all in there too. So if you want more information, you can take some time out after the webinar to take a look and, you know, see if you have any questions about that. And if you do have questions, you can add, there was a link in our survey information in the beginning of the webinar, so you could submit those questions, and then maybe we can answer those for you in a future webinar. So again, go at the end of at the end of the slides, you'll see the glossary with different terms and more information there. And for everyone who is in the LGBTQIA community, happy Pride.
All right, Anna, if you want to go to our next slide, we're going to move into our question and answer portion of our webinar. And so I know Rebecca's been compiling those, and I know I'm going to come back to you because I know that we saw a couple questions around guardianship. And I know there's one here from Chelsea, and it says, can an individual give consent if their parents have legal guardianship? So I don't know if one of our panelists, Erica, Max, or Catherine, if one of you guys would like to, certainly all three of you can address it, but is there someone that would like to lead the charge there?
Well, I'm my own legal guardian. Nobody has charge of me. So I'm my own legal guardian, but when it comes to money, someone else is going to have it. Someone else is going to like take care of it instead of me, but mostly I'm on my own. I'm my own legal guardian.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you bring up a really good point that if somebody has a guardian, it doesn't mean that the guardian gets to decide whether they can be in a relationship or not. Maybe they have guardianship over financial things, like the example that you said, so about money, but they don't have control of your whole life. But one thing is that they may make it really difficult for you. And it kind of, to me, it loops back to sexual self-advocacy and talking to your parent or guardian about what you want and why you want to be in a relationship or why you want to be sexual, and advocate for yourself and saying, I deserve this and I have these feelings too. But I think in general, legal guardians cannot stop you from being in a relationship unless they have lots and lots of control of your life and all the decisions you make. But definitely getting information about sexuality, I don't know any guardianship where a guardian can stop you from getting information or attending this webinar or anything like that. And that you should have the right to be in a relationship if that's something that you want, and speak up for that.
And Catherine, can I just add too, if you guys go back in the slides and you're talking about how you speak to your partner in a relationship, when you sit tall, you look the person in the eye and all, you can do that with your guardian or with your parent or whoever to tell them, like Catherine said, look, this is what I want. This is who I want to be with. It might work out, it might not work out, but I want to have a relationship. I want to have friendships. This is what I want. And then you're going to have to respect my choices and my wishes. And then, of course, educate me and help me, along the way if I need it.
Yes, because my relationship is very complicated to the point where he lives with his family. He has cerebral palsy. He has it very bad. He doesn't remember things. I'm on the other end are way, really high in my cognitive, my disability or whatever it is. It's very mild. It's not to the point where I don't understand things. It's to the point where I do understand things unless it's complicated, but it's extremely complicated. And I just, I do what I can for him because he doesn't understand things. So I help him out as much as I can, and I love him for who he is.
And that's awesome. And again, you guys keep pushing on, and just as long as both people are saying yes, you're good to go.
Oh yeah, his mom treats me like family. I'm family to them, so that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say too that I got a private message. Someone had talked about staff and client sexual relationships, and we touched on that a little bit about if you're attracted to someone who's okay to be a partner with and who isn't. But they wanted me to talk about how there are people who are paid and have power over you, and that they shouldn't be in a sexual relationship with you, that would be sexual abuse. So the examples they use is a Special Olympics coach was having sex with an individual on their team. That's not okay because they're in a position of power. And you might have said yes, but they still shouldn't have pursued that relationship. Or a teacher, it's not okay for a teacher or a staff person that's being paid. So I think it touches on some of the consent that we talked about. But there are lots of people that are being sexually abused by someone that's helping them. So that's not a healthy relationship.
Anna, would you explain to folks how they could raise their hand? So if so you could unmute their lines if they wanted to ask a question. I'll let you explain it because you'll probably do a better job than myself.
No problem. Someone actually raised their hand earlier, but then unraised it. You can hover over and raise your hand if you choose to, or if you wanted me just to write in the chat box, please unmute my mic, and I can unmute your mic if you'd like to speak, or you can write your questions in the chat box. And if you don't want your name to be seen, you can send your chat privately to Miss Rebecca Morris, and she'd answer your question.
So this is Rebecca, we have some questions that I've been collecting as we go. Would y'all like some of those right now? The panelists? Okay. So this was a public question from Nicole in AK. What if it is too hard to stick up to say no, but they still make you and you don't want to do it? Anything?
Mm-hmm. Hello, I would say in that situation, and I encourage the folks I support to always have a person that you can talk to, like a person you trust. So it can be staff. Sometimes people tell me things, and but someone you trust and someone that you can have a conversation with, and to tell the person, you know, what's going on, how you're feeling, what the other person is doing to you, you know, what you don't like about it. And then, like we said on that slide previously, when we talked about like being in a relationship with someone, and that applies to if the person has a disability or not, it applies to all of us. So if someone is taking advantage of you, if someone is being physical with you, if someone's doing something that's causing harm to you, then my first go-to is to just make sure that you have someone that you can talk to and someone you can trust, and then see if you guys can come together with a plan to make sure that these things aren't happening to you.
And even thinking about, why is it so hard to stick up for myself? Am I worried I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings? Am I worried about something? There may, you know, it's hard for lots of people to stick up for themselves. So why is it hard for you to stick up for yourself and talk to that person that Erica mentioned? And maybe a counselor too, on how to be assertive. Max, anything to add to that?
I don't have anything to add to that. I think you guys hit the nail right on the head. I wanted to go back to a previous question, but that's only if we had time, and I saw it displayed. I don't know if you saw that in the chat box somewheres.
Yeah, no, I think let's go ahead and take that time, Max.
There was a question that was displayed, and that was how to be gay. And I want to just answer that real quickly. I think, to my understanding, probably it was meant to, you know, ask how to come out. But just to hit on, you know, one point that I wanted to make it, how to be gay is, it's not a matter of how, it's just like your sexual orientation, however to identify, is who you are. It's like if someone were to ask how to have autism, for me as a person with autism, it's not a matter of how, it's just, you know, how my brain, you know, works. And it's just pretty much just who I am. It just makes me who I am as a person. So I just, you know, wanted to point that out, that like whatever makes you you, it's not a matter of how in that regard.
Thank you, Max. Our next slide.
Can I just add something?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that when Max was talking about who you are, that oftentimes people with disabilities get messages about not being a sexual person and not, you don't need this information. And whether you're gay, lesbian, or bisexual or not, you do have the right to get this information, and you are a sexual being. Everyone is from birth to death, whether they have a disability or not. Okay, go ahead, Julie.
No, thank you. I was going to say, on our next slide, there are 2 websites that if you that have a little bit more question or a little bit more information about QIA. Make sure I get all the letters in there. And so I'll leave this up for just a minute. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our webinar for today. I certainly thank our panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedules to be here. And for those who have participated, thank you. We are so excited to do this. And that we've heard from people that self-advocates want this information, and we're hoping that we can connect and bring this information to you. We will have a sex talk for self-advocates number 2 coming up. We're going to be working with our panelists to get the dates for that and to go through the content. Again, we're going to be looking to those surveys that folks have submitted. It is still open. I believe the link just went out in the chat box if you'd like to go to that survey, if you'd like to add your questions to be answered by our panelists. I believe our next talk, we're going to get more into sexuality itself, into sexual relationships. So with that, panelists or Rebecca, any last words to add?
Go, Max, go.
No, just, this has been a great, webinar, and I hope, people can join us for the next, and I'm looking forward to, talking on the next one.
All right, and there was a quick question. We do not have a date. As soon as we have a date, we will make sure that we get that out, that we're advertising it. Anna, correct me if I'm wrong. We can send that date to the list of participants who were on the webinar today. Is that correct?
Correct. If you're on this webinar, you'll get a link to the recording, a link to the slides, and the information for the next webinar, the registration and all. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. I just have a great, what's today? Monday. Have a great Monday. And we'll talk to you later.
All righty. Take care, everybody.